Welcome back to the New Little Life channel. If you're on this video, you're probably pumping in some way or another, but is it working? In this video, we're going to talk about 10 red flags that you need to be aware of as signs that pumping is not working like we want it to. I am going to put a free PDF download in the description and in the comments. So if you want to download these red flags to kind of have them and keep them with you to make sure that these aren't happening to you, that'll be down below for you. And if you find that a lot of these red flags are ringing true to you and you want some individualized support, we do have a long-term coaching program designed specifically for career-driven moms who are also breastfeeding and pumping at work. So the information to apply for that is down below as well. We help mothers with this a lot. And actually, I pulled a lot of these red flags from my community and my coaching clients because a lot of times this is what they show up inside of our program with and what we help them uncover and unpack. So let's just dive right in and start with number one. Number one red flag that pumping may not be going well is really long pumping times. This is a common question I get actually. How long should a pumping session be? And I would say on average, somewhere between 15 and 30 minutes. Again, a very average. I would say it's most often closer to that 30-minute mark. Sometimes like somewhere between 20, 25, 30 minutes seems to be the norm. Only super efficient, like easy milk makers can get a good session in 15 minutes or less than that. Honestly, it doesn't happen very often that we can do less than that. But anytime I see someone going over 30 minutes, so 40, 50, sometimes 60 minutes I've heard of before, that is a huge red flag to me that something about pumping is not working well. Now, there certainly are ways to pump faster. You really need to understand your body, your milk supply, and how to pump correctly. I did another video talking about how to pump less, which was kind of fun. But if it's taking you longer than 30 minutes consistently to get really well emptied, that's a red flag. Number two sign that pumping may not be going great is that you're pumping excessively. Anything more than 10 times per day would have me concerned. A more common range is somewhere between 7 and 9, okay? And again, this varies widely. If you have a huge oversupply, you may be able to get away with 4 times a day, okay? If your breast can hold a lot, you have a large storage capacity, and you have an oversupply, you might be able to do much less than that. But anything over, I think like 10, 9 is a lot, right? Even 10 is a lot of times to be pumping every day. If you're having to pump that many times to get the milk out that you need, or if you're pumping that many times and still not getting the milk out that you need, that's a huge red flag that something is not right. Now, there's no substitute for frequent milk expression, okay? So you're going to spend a lot of time feeding and or pumping or whatever you're doing. But when I see a schedule that looks like 10 plus pumps a day, that's concerning. Just a note, if you're feeding at the breast more often, you may see more than 10 feeds a day, and that's because babies do things on their own schedule, right? They take smaller feeds, more frequent feeds, so don't be alarmed if you're feeding at the breast seeing 10. I'm specifically talking about pumping, especially if you're exclusively pumping, doing more than 10. No, that's a lot, too many. Number 3 red flag is that you do not have enough output to fill the bottles. I especially see this in moms that are combination feeding at the breast and pumping. So feeding at the breast is going fairly well, baby's growing well, milk supply is there. And then if you're not able to pump enough milk to fill the bottles that you need when you're separated from your baby, that can be a sign that pumping is not going well. Here's the caveat on this one. It can also be really tricky to determine what is happening here. So there's another video on the channel on low milk supply versus low milk output, and that would be a good one to watch too. I'll put it in the description for you. And I'll also link it in the PDF download if you just want to download that, and then you can click that link right there. But it can also be actual low milk supply that you have low pumping output, right? But it can also be that your milk supply is fine, we're just not getting the milk out that's there waiting to, something's not right with pumping. As a side note, it could also be a baby being overfed in a bottle. There's just a lot of factors here. But if you're not able to pump enough milk to fill the bottles that your baby needs, something is not right, and we got to kind of figure out what that is. Number 4 red flag for pumping is that you have a sudden decrease in output. A sudden drastic change in output is a great indication that something is not right. Now, small dips in supply are normal, especially, around your period. That can happen if you're sick. In times of high stress, it can kind of be normal to have a little dip and kind of like waxes and wanes. It's never the same every single day. Oh, the sun went down. Whatever. But if you notice a sudden drastic drop, like you were getting 25 ounces and then today you got 12, that is a huge sign that something is not right. Often it's a pumping problem, especially if you're measuring output that way. The place I look for, usually the first, is problems with the pump itself. So is there something that's not right in the setup, in the flange kit? It's unlikely that you have such a sudden, sharp decrease in your milk supply, like overnight. So that's a huge indication that this is a pumping problem, either with the pump and setup itself or with the way that we're pumping and our ability to get breast milk out with a breast pump. Number 5 is kind of along those same lines, but a slow decrease in milk output and even milk supply. This is actually exactly what happened to me when I went back to work with my first one. It just kind of crept lower and lower and lower. And I'll put a video if you want to hear more about my story and why I actually ended up even coaching working moms long-term through this process anyway. But this is what happened, is it just started going down and down because pumping was working kind of okay, but it wasn't working great. And I actually didn't know that until it was way too late. Sorry, the sun keeps going behind clouds and messing with my lighting. But in the first 3 months postpartum, your post-pregnancy hormones are really helping you out. In this time frame, milk often comes faster and is released easier. And you can often get away with suboptimal pumping habits during this time frame. The really unfortunate thing is that 3-month kind of milk regulation that happens often coincides with the same time frame that mothers usually go back to work after maternity leave, which kind of makes for a perfect storm of madness because you might have kind of a false sense of security on maternity leave, being like, oh yeah, pumping's going great, it's like easy, whatever. And then right around the time that you really need to be pumping correctly and that supply and demand is huge, it's often the same time frame that you're going back to work, and it just is a disaster. So if you start to see your supply slowly going down, that's a red flag that something isn't working quite right. This one's tricky too because sometimes it's a pumping problem and sometimes it's a mental and emotional problem, both of which we coach mothers through inside of our long-term coaching program. Like I mentioned, there is a link down below to apply if that's interesting to you. But if you're struggling, ask for some help. It can be really hard to diagnose what's happening on your own, but give it a go. There's lots of help here on the channel, but just know that we're here if you need it too. Okay, number 6 is pain or discomfort. Pumping should not be painful, okay? It just shouldn't. It should be fairly comfortable. And obviously you're going to feel a little suction and tugging, but if you're experiencing pain or discomfort, it is not normal. Actually, when Charlotte joined our program, her most immediate goal was to be able to wear a shirt again. She was in that much pain. Her nipples were raw, pumping hurt every time. She was kind of like pushing through because you women are just superheroes and you just like keep going and doing the thing, which is crazy to me. But she was in so much pain, nothing could really touch her breasts. She was exclusively pumping, not making enough milk, and at her wit's end. But I am happy to report now that Charlotte is wearing clothes again and she's doing great. She is making enough milk and has a solid plan to make it to her baby's first birthday. She has done amazing. But again, just to illustrate that pain with pumping is not normal. It should be fixable, okay? Something is not quite right. That's an easy red flag. We got to fix something, get some help. This one's tricky, but it could be things like flange sizing, suction settings, maybe your pumping schedule is too rigorous, the type of pump you're using, an underlying health condition, yeast infection, blebs. There's just like so many things, but there's a few for you to kind of explore if you're experiencing a lot of pain and discomfort with pumping. Flange sizing is a big one. We do that a lot. Okay, number 7 is engorgement, clogged ducts, and or mastitis. If you are experiencing any of these things, something is not quite right. Okay, so these can happen for a wide variety of reasons. Some may be pumping related, some maybe not, but these are all signs that something is not quite working right. It is pretty common to feel a little bit engorged in those first few days, especially when your milk kind of comes in full blast. So that's not always like a bad thing, and we kind of deal with that in other ways. But anytime if you're having this reoccurring, if your breasts feel full often and you're unable to empty them, especially with a pump, that's a red flag, right? If milk stays in the breast, that's called milk stasis, when it's just not moving and hanging out, then you sometimes can get clogged up. And then if that gets infected, that turns into mastitis, right? So we need to be removing milk frequently and efficiently, right? We got to get the milk out. So if any of those symptoms are happening, then that might be a red flag that something about pumping isn't working well. Number 8 is if you're feeling anxious or frustrated around pumping, this is a sign that pumping's not working, right? It's not easy, right? We got to do it. It's a lot of work. But if you're continually feeling anxious and frustrated about this, something isn't working right. Maybe you are getting all the milk that you need, but if you're feeling just always anxious or frustrated or confused or unsure, something's not right, okay? So I think a lot of this comes down to just like a lack of understanding about your own body and pumping in general. Not knowing what works best for you to be able to adjust your milk supply up and down, kind of not having control of your experience can be really frustrating. I actually did another video on milk supply anxiety, which I'll link down below for you as well, but it's tricky and there can be a big lack of realistic expectations. I think social media plays a heavy role in this area, and even breast pump marketing kind of subtly puts these things in your mind. Oh my word, I made a reel on Instagram, I think I put it on YouTube Shorts too the other day, about a photo that I found on a breast pump marketing page, and it showed like before you get this pump, there's like half an ounce in there. And then it showed, with this pump. And there was 11 ounces in that bottle. I'm like, that is not normal. If you're pumping 11 ounces in a session, you have an oversupply, right? You have a large milk storage capacity. This is not the normal. And for one, to claim, to put those images on and claim that your pump can do that is absolutely ridiculous. But also kind of just, that's a huge bottle, okay? No wonder you feel inadequate for pumping 3 to 4 ounces every session, which is a totally respectable amount. And social media is tricky too. People like to post what they're proud of, okay? I would too. If I did something, I had a great day, I'm like, I made milk today. I'm so proud of myself. I've been struggling. But when you see all of these people's best days, right? You're just seeing bottles of milk. And you're like, what's wrong with me? You don't really get to see the backside, the bad days, right? So keep that in mind. If you're feeling anxious, frustrated about this process, something's not right. Either with your pumping experience and your milk supply, that could be totally valid, but maybe also with the expectations and kind of mindset that you're in. So just be cautious there. Number 9, red flag that pumping may not be going well is that your supply is not where you want it to be. And I chose not to say that your supply is low, right? Because you could also have an oversupply, or you could have a supply that is right on, exactly meeting the needs of your baby. But if you're not able to adjust it how you want it, there might be a pumping problem. A breast pump is a tool. And like any tool, you should be able to utilize it to get a job done and get the results that you want, okay? There are a lot of factors that go into pumping, as you know, and this is not always a pumping problem. But if you're unhappy with where your milk supply is and you don't have the control that you want of it, that you're not able to bring it down when it's too much, to bring it up when it's not enough, or maybe it is just enough, your baby has established a great supply for you, but you want a little bit extra for your freezer stash. If you're not able to get it where you want it by utilizing a tool like a breast pump, that's a sign that something may not be working correctly. Maybe it's the process of pumping, maybe it's the type of pump that you have, or maybe it's something underlying with your milk supply in general, but that's something to figure out. If it's not where you want it to be, whatever that means to you, then maybe a red flag that pumping isn't quite working how we would like it to. And then number 10, I actually think I might have a bonus one on here for you. But number 10, red flag that pumping may not be working well is if pumping has taken over your life, okay? This experience is about more than just milk. And I am a firm believer that this is more than ounces, okay? The amount of milk that you pump is a really easy thing to obsess over, and sometimes in an unhealthy way. This more mindset causes a lot of unnecessary work, and especially if you forget your overall goal. I actually think there's another video on the channel called More or something like that, talking about this never enough mindset. If this is all you're thinking about, this is a red flag that there's a pumping problem. Okay. For one, I'm worried about sustainability, because if this has taken over your life, especially for career-driven women, especially the ones that we work with in our coaching program, pumping can't take over your life, right? We have other things that we need to take care of. So for one, it's not sustainable. If this is all you're thinking about and it just takes over, we can't do this long term. This can also kind of play into some postpartum anxiety. So if you feel like you are overly anxious in a lot of areas of your life, or if you're struggling with postpartum depression, reach out to your OB, your healthcare provider, and get some help. Postpartum anxiety can really make pumping output and this obsession a lot trickier. But there may need to be a mindset shift here, especially if you have a career to attend to. And here's your bonus one, because looks like I had more than 10. There's a lot of signs that pumping isn't working, right? But this one is if you're approaching burnout, okay? Even if everything is working beautifully, if you are mentally struggling, it's not actually working, all right? And I want to be very clear that it's not all about the milk. You matter too. Nobody gives you a gold star for dragging your tired, broken body across the finish line. And I've even heard women say that they have such negative feelings about, like, particularly a first experience or a previous experience, that it's affecting their decision to have another baby. I hear pretty often that a poor pumping experience is affecting women's decisions to return to their jobs that they loved, to careers that they've built, that they're not going back, that they're quitting their jobs because pumping has taken over their lives, that feeding their baby breast milk. And I want you to have both things. I want you to be able to breastfeed your baby, which means that you're going to have to pump when you're separated from them. And I want you to thrive in your career. And I think you can have both. It may not just look like it did before you had a baby. We really have to approach it in a holistic way. There's a lot of identity shift that comes when you are a new mother. Whether this is your first, second, third, seventh, we can't do things the way we used to do them. And if you want to breastfeed your baby, if that's really important to you, and you want to maintain your career to these high standards that I know you probably have, we've got to find a way to make that work together, okay? If you're approaching burnout, if you're doing everything for everybody, and you're like, I am one bad moment away from just flipping out and running away, that's a sign that pumping is not working. I don't care if you're making enough milk for your baby. That's not working, and you deserve more. You deserve help and support through this. So I just wanted to throw that out there as a bonus red flag, because it's really important to my heart. If you want some coaching help from a coach who is specifically designed to help career-driven women who are pumping in the workplace, please reach out and apply below. That's exactly what me and my team do. But I hope this video was able to give you some red flags to watch out for things that maybe are signs that are not working, things that are going to affect you long-term down the road. So make sure you download that free guide that came with this. There'll be some more information and some links in there, and hopefully we'll talk more soon. Happy pumping. Good luck.